Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Dr. Gamer Retro with another episode of Video Game Collectors on Call. Today, I have a special guest coming to us all the way from the Netherlands. Big time difference, so I really appreciate his time being here with me today. This is retrogamepapa. How's it going, man?
Yeah, it's great to be here, and
Good.
it's you're welcome.
Good, good, good. So yeah, again, I appreciate you with the working with the time difference. So Peter, as you're known as, is also, for those of you not aware, a musician, a drummer, from what I hear. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm a drummer, and I mainly teach because I play metal music mostly. That doesn't bring in the big bucks unless you're in
Okay.
Slipknot, not or
Okay.
Metallica or something.
Wow. Okay.
I
So
mainly
so
teach. I love teaching.
good, good. Well, hopefully I'll learn something from you today about maybe some video games I've never heard before. That's kind of the whole goal of this podcast is to teach people things they might not know or see things they've never seen. So
Hopefully,
when
yeah,
when did you start your love for gaming? Do you remember the time?
yeah, I do. I must have been around 4 or 5 years old. I don't know the exact age. We moved. I'm a single child. I'm an only child. I mean, and I moved with my parents to a new home. And I remember that pretty quickly after we moved there, my dad set me behind a TV with a keyboard. I already didn't know what a TV was. And then he set me behind it and just with his hands showed me, well, you can do something now.
Huh?
So do something with the screen. So I
Yeah.
must have been 4. We moved when I was 4, and it was on the MSX. It's not a well-known system
Yeah, I've not heard of
in the
that one. Who
United States.
who makes that?
It was a Japanese kind of a PC, and it was one of those systems that multiple companies were allowed to make one. So Philips made one, I believe Panasonic, and all those companies. A lot of companies, Dutch companies, also Philips is originally a Dutch brand, but also all kinds of different brands made MSX systems actually.
Did it use discs or cartridges, or how did it work?
Cassettes and also a disk drive. And already my dad had a disc for diskettes, those floppy, not the floppy
Mm-hmm.
ones, but the smaller ones.
Mm-hmm.
And we already had that from the get-go, and it was apparently pretty rare. Much later, I found out that a
Wow.
lot of people used cassettes, and my dad was pretty, yeah, on the well, constantly, especially in the 80s. We always had the new stuff at home. Later on, of course, I found out because I was born in '82, so it must have been around '86, '87 that he set me behind the MSX, and it was just magical. I still think it's magical.
Do you still have
Because
it? Do you still have that system today?
no, that's one of the few things that we didn't keep. It was originally my dad's. In the end, I did a lot of stuff on the MSX. We also had a weird plotter printer used, which was an amazing thing. Which just used a ballpoint pen. Actually, you could use for printing, and just
Wow.
like a robot arm would draw everything you made on the MSX. It was really kind of a PC system actually, and I played so many games on there. Konami games mostly. They
Okay.
There was a seal of quality on that system, and it remained to be for a long time. Konami remained for a long time a seal of quality for me. But we're gonna talk about it later on. And the first console that I actually got myself was a
Huh?
Game Boy when I was 12, and
Okay.
that started it reignited my passion even more, so to speak, and that really made me have my own collection eventually.
Is there any
I
game that
even
sticks out in your memory from the Game Boy that you had? Any specific
Well, I
game?
still own. From then on, I still own nearly everything, unless I really thought it sucked or was pretty much done with it. I
Yeah.
rebought at MSX last year or 2 years ago, around something,
Okay.
which became emotional from it, but it was really it meant a lot to me. It really, but my whole childhood is the MSX and the PC actually. And from 12 years on, I had consoles, and I switched slowly to console gaming. But I still have my original. I got a Game Boy when I was 12,
Huh?
and with this game, and this is the original, so, because I never sold
Wow.
off my stuff. And this shows how incredibly careful I was with my
But
stuff.
yeah,
There's a
that
slight discoloration here. That's it, man. That's
wow.
all in mint. it's mint condition.
Yeah, especially for how many years it's been around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's also the luck of being an only child. Not having
Yeah.
a younger brother that just rips everything
Sure.
apart. I've got 2 kids myself, and yeah, the oldest has to sometimes he finds a little bit of a thing left from a toy of his that's his younger brother it destroys him. So
Yeah.
it always immediately from the get-go it was important to me to keep it safe and to keep the tactility of having something physical also.
Yeah,
I
no,
love
that's
that.
I think so many times a lot of people, at least, myself and some of my friends when we were younger, the boxes we just throw away. And that's why there's,
I never
so
did.
few boxes left. So that's good to see that you've kept those.
I have only thrown away 2 big boxes ever, and it was Lufia. There came in a big box here. It's the second Lufia actually. The Star Fox 64. I don't know what came over me. That's the only 2 I ever threw away. I still
Okay.
remember it.
Have you repurchased ones now since then to
No,
use or no?
not those 2 boxes.
Uh-huh.
No.
Okay.
I would like to have them back, but no, they're not really a priority. It's a bit of a
Hmm.
shame that I don't have them anymore, but it's not
Yeah.
that important to me. If I
Yeah.
really, really wanted them back, I would have gotten them back already.
That's true. That's true. Well, when I look through your Instagram account, I
Yeah,
have people on the show, maybe someone who collects all Sega Genesis games or someone who has all the Super Nintendo games. But when I look at your account, it seems like you collect a little bit of everything. Is that
it's very
true? Or
eclectic. It's very
yeah.
eclectic. Yes, it is. And I've I have a very broad taste with nearly everything. It's also with music, for example, but it's also with movies, and it's the same with video games. I like almost every genre up until a certain degree. Sports games is the lowest for me, but I also can name some. I also can name some amazing sports games. So, but that's
Like
I
what?
always
What are some amazing sports games? I'm just curious.
well, it's mostly the ones that aren't too realistic.
Okay, so
Gonna
not
be
like Madden or whatever, but maybe, Mutant League Football or something.
Ice hockey is pretty
Yeah.
amazing. That's hard to come by over here. You need to import those games because hardly anyone plays ice hockey over here. Of course, Canadians
Right.
and in
Yeah.
America it's way bigger.
Yeah.
And also I like the golf games every once in a while. Every few years I get into a golf game. But Mario Golf is then the one I prefer the most, I think, and that's the least realistic one. But I like it not too realistic.
Yeah. I think when you say golf, I remember one of my early games I first had. Sega Genesis was my first, I think, real console that was my own,
Yeah.
and I didn't have to share with my brother. And I had a game called Pebble Beach Golf Links for
Yeah,
that.
that's a very famous one.
Yeah, so I had that one for Sega Genesis.
I'm considering buying that one for the Saturn also.
Oh, okay.
But I really just collect games that I want to play, and I have a very broad taste. And I started off with the Game Boy, and then I went to the Super Nintendo, and I always played NES games and Mega Drive. We call the Genesis the Mega Drive over here at other friends' houses. So I always also liked Sega a lot. Sega's cool. And when I was 16, got into touch with someone that had kind of a business going, a little bit shady. It wasn't stolen stuff that fell off the truck, that not that kind of way, but he knew guys on the inside of the
Uh,
system, so he was able to buy games at a really low price that normally a store would do. As if he had a
right,
store,
right.
so to speak. But he introduced me to a lot of stuff. He was a little bit older than me, and he introduced me to the Sega Saturn, for example. He showed me X-Men versus Street Fighter, and I needed to have a Saturn as soon as I saw that game.
I
And then I slowly kept on buying systems and games. And I'm gonna be honest, it sounds ridiculous, but I was around 28, 29, and I moved out of my parents' house because I was a drummer. I could drum. I almost gonna curse there. I played the drums a lot, and even metal
uh,
drums, really fast and heavy and double
yeah.
bass and stuff. And at my parents' place, no one ever said anything about it. I had even had fans living in the street that said to me, "Oh, you're the drummer. Oh, it's amazing, man." And so I stayed at my parents' place for a long time because I
Okay.
had the attic for myself. But I
Yeah.
moved out of there, and I thought, wow, I have a lot of games now. Like I just bought games. Oh, this is a cool game. I want to have this. Oh, this, and I always kept on playing the older systems. They ridiculed me when I was 19, 20. around that age, I got ridiculed by a few people. You're still playing Super Nintendo games? Yes, I am. And who's laughing now, by the way?
Oh yeah.
And I thought, well, let me see how much I have actually. I have no idea. I have these rows, and then I was already over 1,200 or something, 1,200 games, and never was one title bought with me being as a collector. That I saw myself as a collector of video games. I just buy it, just like movies. I bought awesome movies that I wanted to see. And then before you know it, you get a couple hundred movies. But with video games, because I love video games so much, it was already in the thousands video games.
Yeah.
And
so
it's still the way I approach it now. I have, I think less than 1% is games I bought for preservation or because they are historically interesting or something like that, you know.
So you being the first person on my show that is international, I guess we could say. I had someone from Canada.
Yeah, man.
So congratulations, you know.
I feel honored.
Canada was the first furthest away since you, but are there games in Europe or wherever that you're at that you have that maybe are not available to people here that are really cool that people should know about?
Yeah, there are collectors will know these games exist. So a lot of people that from your audience will say, the ones I'm going to show or name, will say, oh, I know this one. I thought this question would perhaps come up. So I've prepared it a little.
Excellent.
Because one of those titles is Deep Fear.
Okay.
For the Sega Saturn. This only came out in Japan and in Europe. And it is ridiculously expensive. By now. I bought this over 20 years ago. I think 22 years ago or something. And nobody cared.
Now, is that case a custom case, or is that how the Sega Saturn cases look over there?
Yeah, there are two kinds of Sega Saturn cases in Europe. This is the second one. It's interesting to show, by the way. This is the second version. This is with also an inner paper printed sleeve that goes in there, and it's all just decent plastic. But people that know this knows it's gonna. I'm gonna show you.
Okay.
This is the first version, and this is cardboard.
Okay.
With glue onto plastic. It sucks. All of them come loose, but I still like it. It has because they're so big. The big boxes. That's so amazing about these. They're all. Every Sega Saturn game was released like this in a long, big box, like most Saturn games, I believe, also in the States.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware that the boxes were different. I know PlayStation, the boxes, I know for sure look different. But as far as the other systems, I hadn't gotten into that too much. I know Super Nintendo.
And they had to, with the PlayStation 1, they had to, because of the localization, all the different languages over here. The manuals, on average, the manuals were very thick. So
when you buy a PlayStation game, for example, or when you did, the manual would be in several different languages. Is that correct?
9 times out of 10. 9 times out of 10, yeah. Because I'm in the Netherlands, and we've got Belgium, and we've got Luxembourg. And so we've got a lot of games that were in Dutch and in French. There was also a lot of the times the case. The two languages. It was never just in Dutch. And I believe not even 5% of the games were just in Dutch. It was very rare. But I grew up with English, I love my own language, but it sounds silly. A lot of the times it sounds really silly, my language. It's great for cursing. It's one of the best languages in the world for cursing. We've got some amazing curse words, and we sound like we want to attack people all the time if you just talk normally. So it has some advantages, but I love the English cadence way more. When a game is set to Dutch, I want to switch it to English as soon as possible if I'm able to.
So are the games that you're purchasing also, this might be a dumb question, but let's say you put a PS2 game in, does it immediately ask you, do you want to play it in Dutch or English, or is it just in English right away?
With Dutch, they hardly ever bother to put anything in Dutch because we're such a small country and not many people speak our language. So they 9 times out of 10 they don't even bother. But you have some language select with a lot of games. Yeah, you see those. And also 9 times out of 10 it's these flags you can choose between.
Okay. And so you better know your own country's flag, if you don't.
Localization, localization of PS2 games is ridiculous over here. It can differ from game to game, within a series even. So one game could be have a version which is 8 different languages. So you boot up the disc, you get a choice of 8 different languages. And it could also be that you've just got a French version. So there was a specifically French localization, a specific German localization, and it's all over the place. It's a gamble, because there are some games that are really expensive, like Kuon, for example.
Yep.
It's a really expensive one. I bought the German version for €40, which is the same. It's all roughly the same in dollars. When it was already way more expensive if you wanted the English version. But it's just a manual and the back of the box that's in German. The game itself, you just get a language select. German, French, and English also. So I just bought that one. Who cares? And I can read German perfectly fine. I'd rather have English, but
right.
I mean, I'm not paying €100 or $100 more to have the manual in English, you know?
Right. No, that's
So
definitely
I have a couple
fair.
of those. Rule of Rose, for example, I bought for €35-40 when it was just over a year old. I was looking for it, and it wasn't released. I found out they didn't release it over here. What's happening? Because I saw the trailer and I wanted that game, so I was following it as much as possible back then, because we're talking 22, 24 years ago or something. And then I only found one copy of a French version, but the game is in English. So the manual is in French. I can also read a bit of French. That's the fun of being a Dutch person. You learn all these other languages.
Well, I think that game here in the United States for a complete in box copy is maybe like $600 or $700 now. So it's quite an expensive game.
They found a case in Italy or something with the UK versions over here. So it's now €300 for sale on eBay. They found a shipment or something hidden in a. It's a weird thing.
Like a hidden palette of several copies, and yeah.
So
the game
lower in price now.
Game you were showing a little bit ago, remind me, what was it called? Deep Fear? Was that right?
Yeah.
Deep Fear. So for those watching who are not aware of that game, can you explain what that game is about? Is it a survival horror game, kind of like, or?
It's Resident Evil done by Sega. It's very easy.
Wow.
And I borrowed that game off a friend of mine when I was 17 or 18, when that game was. It's the last game that came out on the Sega Saturn over here in Europe, and I loved it. I was already a big fan of Silent Hill and a big fan of Resident Evil, and this game is on the bottom of the ocean. It tells a story also about some sort of outbreak. It's more to do with a kind of a mutation in a bacteria or something, and it's Resident Evil. It plays exactly like Resident Evil, only you're on the bottom of the ocean and you go into a submarine and stuff. I really like the setting. I really like the story. The acting is even worse, which is amazing. It's amazing. How do you pull it off? It's even worse.
Yeah. So also in third person and all those things.
It's exactly the same. Pre-rendered backgrounds with camera angles, set camera angles and stuff.
That's very cool. I'm a huge fan of Resident Evil, so I'll definitely have to check that one out.
You should look it up. And if I can advise everyone not to seek out this version, because it's ridiculously expensive. Just seek out the Japanese version. That's still affordable. It's constantly slowly rising in price.
Yeah.
And that also is in English, but some menu stuff is in Japanese.
Got it.
It saves you hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
I highly recommend it. There are some people that think it sucks. Of course, they're always out there. I love it.
It sounds great to me. Sounds like it's right up my alley.
Yeah. I heard you say that Resident Evil was your favorite.
Yeah.
And this should be right up your alley.
Perfect.
It does some stuff differently. The setting is still highly original, because it's in the bottom of on the bottom of the ocean in some kind of a workstation there, and in a submarine and stuff.
That's cool. Awesome. No, I definitely need to look into it.
Yeah,
what about what would you say is your rarest game that you own?
Well, that surely is one of them.
Huh? Do you have some other ones next to you to show off?
Yeah, I've cherry picked a few.
Yeah. Let's see.
Also, there's one of my recent grails is Chaos Break. That's the same That's the same thing. It's a third-person survival horror game. This came out when already the PS2 was out. So nobody cared. And it's not the best. It's not the best, but not many games are. So it's a proper I think also you should look this up. It's Chaos Break. It's pretty rare also, but
Is it only available in PAL or
yeah.
it's? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the sucky thing about it.
Yeah.
And I also got Panzer Dragoon Saga. And the rarest thing about it is that I have a mint condition European version.
Well, I haven't aired this episode yet, but there's actually an individual who I just talked to who has a minty US version. So it's kind of ironic that you present that today. So
yeah. This really sparked my. I bought this about 10 years ago, and for way cheaper than it is now, but it was still a couple €100. And I thought, well, I can afford it. And I've always wanted it. When
it is quite expensive.
I was 17, 18, I borrowed this off of a friend of mine. He said, it's really rare. It's really expensive, but I know you love games so much in RPG, so you can borrow it from me for 2 weeks, which wasn't enough. It wasn't enough time. Especially I was in college and studying my ass off. And so it was, I was so happy when this came in. It's a whole story how ridiculously shady that the seller was. And the photograph on eBay proved to be not his own photograph. He just plucked it off of Google.
Yeah, that happens.
The payment also didn't went through PayPal. And he sent it out after 2 weeks. And it was the original. It's everything is the original. But that's one of the rarest I have, especially in the state it is in, because this is a cardboard box which contains two of these cases with each 2 discs inside. And I finished it for the first time a couple months ago. And I've also got this one, Ninja Cup, on the Game Boy Advance. It's called Ninja 5.0.
Okay.
It's called Ninja 5.0. It's Game Boy Advance. I love the Game Boy Advance because it's a handheld Super Nintendo. And it said Konami on the box, and it was I kept the receipt the price sticker
from when you originally bought it.
Yeah, it was second hand, but it was in a really good state, and it was €10. And I remember I was with a friend. He laughed at me because it was a ninja and cup and how ridiculous.
I mean, that sounds cool. Yeah.
It is. It is very cool.
Yeah.
It is really expensive. Limited Run has done a re-release with Konami of this game now. I would get a repro, to be honest. I bought because this is become €700. This I found out that it was this expensive and this rare when I was categorizing my own collection and putting it all in an Excel sheet and just looking up for how much this is going. And this is the one that surprised me by far the most. And the store clerk laughed at me, and my friend laughed at me for buying this. It's an amazing game. It's kind of a puzzle platformer. It plays amazing. Okay. It's very unique how it plays, and it really feels like a Super Nintendo Konami game. I also got these, Castlevania, and that's the Symphony of the Night. This is the Japanese Saturn version, Japanese, and this is the European limited edition with a manga comic and a booklet inside, and it has an extra CD with scores from all Castlevania games up until then.
This
is my holy
definitely.
This is the game that if I only got to keep one game, which would suck, but I think
just that one.
I think I would choose this one. Yeah.
Okay.
It is this game. I love Metroidvania games also, and I love Castlevania. Last year I managed to complete all Castlevania games complete in box. I have them all now, except for some weird re-release or something like that. There's a Konami collection on the Game Boy Color, for example, which contains Castlevania in color. I have only a cartridge of that, for example. But all the main releases, I have them all now, and that's I think that entire collection is my that's the pinnacle of my collection for me personally.
Very good. I think that's kind of like me with Resident Evil. I was saying the other day with someone, I have to, even though I would prefer to play it on PlayStation, I have it on every system. So I have GameCube, PlayStation, the Sega Saturn version, just because, I'm just a huge Resident. And there's, a little slight difference in playing it on those different consoles as well.
Do you have all of them?
I have
Resident Evil games?
All the Resident Evil games. Well, I don't collect any handhelds. So any of the ones that were released on, I think there was a couple on Game Boy. I don't have any of those. All the console ones I do.
Let me show you one.
Okay.
I was planning on not being the one that gets up.
Well, you joined the club. Yep.
Wait a second.
You have joined the club. Yep. So another person getting up to go get a game. I feel like this is somewhat like a curse on the show. Everyone at some point will get up and walk away. But this is me just filling time. That was quick. Perfect. He's back. And here we are.
So I did wanted to own all Resident Evil games because I also love Resident Evil a lot.
Yeah.
So I tracked this one down. Resident Evil Gaiden, or Gaiden,
Yep.
as most people say.
Yep.
On the Game Boy Color, which I really like it, by the way. And this is so damn hard to find. And I got in touch with someone that just has so many doubles of so many rare stuff. And he was on holiday, so he didn't reply on anyone's. And I knew him already a bit, so
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I lucked out. I lucked out a lot with.
That's
with
amazing.
one.
I never seem to get that lucky when it comes to collecting. Everyone, I think I mentioned before, everyone talks about, I found this for, $3, or I found, I never, I'm still waiting on that moment.
It will come, man. I'm absolutely sure. It's also just getting more and more connections. That's the thing.
Right.
And there's also some luck involved, always. I think there's also the luckiest thing for me is that I was sold off any of my stuff.
Yeah.
I just kept it all. And I had my moments when I thought, well, I would like to buy this or that. And for this last year, I didn't play any of my Super NES games anymore. I can just emulate it all now. Shall I perhaps get rid of it? And now let's just wait it out. Let's think about it really carefully. And I also I was early with most of the stuff. The Saturn, for example, around 10 years ago, I collected a lot of games for that, but most games were still pretty cheap. And the ones that I bought 20 years ago, no one cared. No one cared. That Deep Fear was on the shelf for months before I bought it. I already finished the game. I borrowed it off of a friend, and I said, I want my own copy, I think. So
I may need some recommendations on Saturn games for you at some point, because for the first time ever, I got a Saturn, and I've only have maybe 4 or 5 games right now, but I'm looking to get more games because I do think it's a great console and something to check out.
I can highly recommend that you look at the Japanese video games for that, because it's the most successful and most popular Sega console in Japan.
Okay.
The sales sucked over here and in the States.
Mm-hmm.
The Saturn was not a success at all. But in Japan it was a big success. And there are so many amazing games that only came out in Japan on the Sega Saturn. I'm still finding out about new games, and a lot of them have gotten pretty pricey, unfortunately.
The Saturn is very pricey.
Yeah. I have about 100 games. I really was in time with a lot of them. Mm-hmm. Really, really lucky. Like Mr. Bones is also very expensive.
Yes.
Amazing game also, by the way.
What so I know of Mr. Bones, I've never played it, so what exactly is Mr. Bones about?
It's about a skeleton that comes back to life with a necromancer. It's with FMV sequence acting.
Yep.
It's so much fun.
It sounds like Medieval. Have you ever heard of Medieval? It sounds kind of like that. It was a PlayStation game.
But it's 2D pre-rendered like Donkey Kong Country. That's most of the time the way it looks a bit.
Okay.
But the weird thing is, every single level, it has about 23 levels, of which 20 of those are completely unique levels. So you've got the first level is some sort of an endless runner kind of thing, and it's immediately very difficult. So and you don't know what to do, so that sucks a bit. It's not perfect by far. It has really rough edges. But if you pull through, it's amazing. Every level is different. Not one single level is the same. So the one is top-down view, and you have to maneuver around on an icy lake. That's one. That was the most difficult one, by the way. And then there's another one. Is third-person flying, a bit like you do with Star Fox, hanging onto a gargoyle or something.
There's a lot of variety.
And there's a rhythm game in there because you've got the blues. You're a skeleton that's
as a skeleton.
Yeah, it's all around music, and one of the directors is also there's a pretty famous guitar player that made the score and that also plays a little role in one of the FMVs and stuff. And so you have a rhythm game it's amazing. I think it's amazing. There are also people that hate it because it's so rough. You mean yeah? There's been a lot
I
of good
definitely
games.
definitely want to check it out. No, it definitely sounds like a good one.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I can help you out with a lot of I can.
Yeah. Perfect. So we talked about Castlevania being the game that's kind of like your favorite, or the one game if someone said, "Hey, give me all your games, you can keep one." Castlevania would be the one.
I think yeah.
What about console? Is there a console that applies to that as well, where someone says, "Give
That,
me all your consoles, you can keep one"?
that's such yeah. Well, of course you can then choose the Switch because that emulates everything and has almost
Ah, that
everything on
doesn't
there.
count. Yeah, that
No,
doesn't count.
precisely.
Yeah.
So regards to the older consoles, which that's really tough for me. I love my Super Nintendo. That was my number one console for such a long time. But looking at the amazing library that the PlayStation 2 has, for example, I have most games for the PlayStation 2. I have around 500 games, and less of 1% is filler. There have some sucky games because it's also fun to have
Well, of
some
course.
sucky games.
We'll get to that in just a second. Yep, absolutely.
And so I think I would keep my PlayStation 2, I think. But I love, personally, my love is, I think, deeper for my Saturn and my Super Nintendo.
Okay, that's fair.
It's so
No,
difficult,
that's
man.
it is a
Next
difficult
week I
question.
will
I just
next week I will say the Dreamcast, for example. I also love the Dreamcast.
okay.
I have a very broad taste, like I said. I love a lot
Right.
of stuff.
There's nothing wrong with that. So you kind of brought it up a little bit. So another question I like to ask people is, again, it's a difficult question maybe, but what are some of the worst games that you've ever played?
Yeah, that's difficult. One of the
Yeah.
one of the unpopular opinions,
Huh?
and what shocked me the most. I mean, I can name sucky games that just suck. I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone knows it sucks, even the one that made the game. So that's not very interesting to name off. I mean, I can buy. You have these cheap Game Boy like looking things you can buy for $10, which contain 204 games, which it's made in
Mm-hmm.
China, and it's
Mm-hmm.
240 things that absolutely play terrible. It's beta alpha
Yeah.
versions of someone
Yeah.
trying out stuff. So those are the worst. But no, that's I think it's just like with movies. I get the most offended when I know the budget has been huge. I know the testing, they haven't had enough money for testing, and I think it sucks. But like I said, I have a very broad taste, so I rarely have this opinion. I say even with Pro Cycling Manager, which is a cure for insomnia for me personally. I still can see why people like it. It's just not for me. So I'm never that negative. But for a AAA game that everyone loves and that I think really sucked, I've come around to this. But I hated the whole experience. The first is is Smash Brothers. Smash
Smash
Brothers.
Brothers. Which one specifically? All of them? The
All
whole
of
the
them.
whole series. Oh wow.
Every bloody single one of them.
Man,
It's an endless slogfest of trying to hit each other. Nothing happens. It's like a pillow fight. It's like an endless
that's
pillow fight. That's how it
that's
feels to
one
me.
that's one of the games that ruined friendships in my childhood. You had Smash Brothers, you had GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. Those were in Mario Kart. Those were your main. You
I
have
was
three friends come over and
yeah. I still have Melee, and I have bought the Wii version. And a friend of mine really in depth explained to me what makes it good, and I've now come around to it a little bit. Yeah, I think I now see what makes it what my approach needs to be different with this. But I cannot deny that I so much hated those experiences that I had. I not no fun at all. It's not the fact that I lost. I won a lot
yeah,
of the times. Kirby
yeah.
is my main guy.
Me too. A fellow
I
Kirby.
love.
Yeah, I mean, I even have
It's
the shirt
also
on. So
I just love Kirby. I
yeah,
just love him as a. I bought a big plush of Kirby as soon as I found one. It's such a silly, funny.
yeah.
It's one of the first games I also bought for myself with my own money. Was Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy. I still have that in absolute mint condition as well, and I paid way too much money for Kirby's Dream Land 2. Because there was one copy for sale over here in my hometown. One. And I looked at that box for months. And then I said, well, let's sod it. I'm going to pay up. It was a lot of money for me back then. A lot of money. Games
So
were expensive back then.
in regards to that, one question I do have is where you are there a lot of retro video game stores around you that you can go visit? Are they few and far between? Do you buy most things on eBay?
All the video game stores are gone here, actually. It's very sad. Yeah, saddening. There was one left, which also had some older games, and there was its owner. I grew up with that guy. I mean, I went to his store when I was 13, 14. He was already in my hometown here in the Netherlands, and he got into trouble with. It wasn't his fault, by the way, but just bad luck. Let's say it like that. And so we had to close it down, and that was the last one that was left, and it's a couple of years ago now. So no, there's actually nothing for me to drive to a retro game store which has some proper stuff. I need it's a 1 or 2 hour drive, so I want to, but I have 2 kids, I have work to do.
Is that how it is throughout most of the EU as well, or are there certain places that have a lot of video game stores from what you can tell?
Some big cities, the bigger cities. The city I grew up in, I live in a village now just underneath the city I grew up in, so I'm sort of almost in the same zip code still. And it's a pretty big city, but there are even bigger cities, like Amsterdam is a way bigger city.
Mm-hmm.
Amsterdam still has retro game stores, but
Gotcha.
for such a large city, it's just, I think, 2. I do know 1 or 2 that have started out from their home reselling games. So they don't have a real actual store that they pay rent for and everything, a building and everything, a mortar, like Moonshine Gamer always says.
Yes.
Mortars, one of mortar and
brick and mortar.
Brick and mortar, he always
brick
says.
and mortar.
So funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But he has rented a place now, and I go around his place sometimes. He lives nearby, and he has rows of stuff. But yes, I have so much stuff already.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm over 3,000 games now, and I'm not super critical about what I buy. But I never buy just stuff to fill the shelves. No, I always want to be able to play it. Or like there's some rare games. The last one I bought, for example, let me show you, is one that's really important to me. Is Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis.
Indiana Jones.
It's my favorite Indiana Jones adventure. It's my favorite point-and-click adventure, and it's one of my favorite games of all time, actually. And I just love this game so much. I grew up, as soon as it came out on PC, my dad had it. Not a physical copy. My dad was a teacher, so he had quite a lot of means to find illegal copies of everything.
Sure.
And I played it so much, I learned English, a lot of English I learned from these games, because you push. Oh, push means push.
Yeah.
And it's all in bite-sized sentences, So it was also easy to look something up if I didn't know what it meant.
Right.
And so I learned a lot of English. I just love the game, so I love it a lot. And Indiana Jones is an amazing character also. And I just recently got this. I got this weekend.
Oh, very cool.
I got this big box. This is not for me to actually play.
Yeah.
This is.
It just means a lot to you, right? Because from your childhood, so it's something to have as kind of a.
I've always wanted to own a big box original copy, and I love that artwork because it's made by the same artist that did the posters of the movies. I cannot come up with his name. I'm sorry, but
that's okay.
Or her name even. I don't know
sure.
who it is, but it's the same artist, and I just love that. And then this is one of the few. Well, like I said, it's less than 1%. I think it's about a dozen games that I bought for just to keep it as a physical keepsake.
Yeah.
Not all these other games I want to be able to play. Panzer Dragoon Saga, I wanted to physically put the discs in my Saturn and play it.
Right. So we were talking about, where you buy things and stuff like that. One thing I hear a lot over here in the United States is prices being high or inflation on video game prices. Do you guys see that over in the EU as well, or are they not so much the same? Yeah.
It differs sometimes with some titles, which is weird. Like the Def Jam Fight for New York is ridiculously expensive in the United States. It's not over here, and it's because of that scene around it in the United States. There's a whole competitive scene around Def Jam, and not over here. Nobody cares. Just a few collectors. And so we have a few exceptions like that. Kudelka on the PlayStation 1 is also one that was for a long time pretty cheap over here when it was already ridiculously expensive in the States. But those are exceptions. It's in general, it's the same.
About the same.
The same. Yeah, everything has become pretty expensive. There are still moments that prices do some dips with some titles.
Right.
For example, Burning Rangers. That was one of the titles I was missing still from my Saturn collection. It's a pretty cool Sega game, one of the last ones that came out. And it was always around €200. But I found out there were 3 copies for sale on eBay at one time. And they kept lowering each other's prices because nobody bought them. So eventually, I waited it out and I bought one for €80.
Yeah.
And that still happens sometimes. There are also other shady stuff, constantly people trying to pull a short one on each other.
Yeah.
Which I think,
oh, yeah.
Why would you rip off a fellow collector for a couple €30-40?
There are,
bucks,
yeah. People who do that. Yeah, I don't understand it either myself. So let's say, what's the one game right now that's at the top of your list for what you're looking for? Like if someone's watching this and has this game, they can reach out to you and say, "Hey man, I have this game." What is there anything?
Yeah, that changes constantly.
So you don't have like a top 10 of, these are the things I need to buy or whatever. You just kind of, it comes to you, or you walk around a store and you're like, "Hey, I think I'll buy this game. It looks like something I want to play."
I have a list, but I get a craving sometimes. Like with Resident Evil, for example, a couple years ago, I wanted all the Resident Evil games, so I really went searching for them actively. I like collecting niche, smaller subcategories and series a lot. It's a nice gives you a nice focus, and like King of Fighters, for example, I've decided that this year I was gonna play them all and write a large, big article about it at the end of the year. So I'm buying them all. Most of them are not expensive. Most of them are pretty cheap, actually. But the difficulty is in all those different ports. Unless you want a Neo Geo. I don't have a Neo Geo. And then that's something that's such a high price range. It's not worth it also for me. So
yeah.
Constantly, it could be that tomorrow if I find out about a Jurassic Park game I don't have yet. And then all of a sudden I get a craving to find out about it.
Then you want all the Jurassic Park games, It's
Right now I'm into Indiana Jones. My eldest son is a big fan also, and we've got the Great Circle.
Have you beat it yet?
No, I didn't.
No, okay.
I'm also playing Alan Wake 2 still at the moment, and I was playing also some Onimusha 3, and so I'm playing a lot of stuff already. But
Indiana Jones is very good. Yeah, it's very good. I liked it.
I played it for 2-3 hours. I really like machine games anyway. I played those Wolfenstein games, except for Youngblood. I played them all the way through. It's very addictive. I love it thus far. And
great.
I've played the N64 version, and that's one I think that would be on the top of my list. I have a repro, because I wasn't sure how well the Infernal Machine would play. It hasn't had a release in Europe, so and it's expensive, and that one, I would like to own that one physically. A nice original version,
Okay. So if you have the Infernal Machine and you can get a good deal, reach out to retrogamepapa, let him know he's looking for it.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
So, if you've watched, like you said, you've watched the other episodes, I always ask people this question. It can be a little controversial. I think I'm going to know the answer to the question from you, but what do you feel? What are your thoughts on graded games?
Yeah, I have a pretty strong opinion on this.
Okay.
I mean, first of all, you live and let live, and to each their own. If you want to do that, I don't. And even if I would be the ruler of the world, and if people wanted to encase rare games in some kind of a vault and then put a number on it, it's fine. But I don't. I hate it. Yeah, that's I can say that I hate it. I mean, it has to do with multiple things. You turn it into a monetary object. That's first of all. It's not a preservation thing. I don't believe that. And I really need to be careful not to start cursing now, because I don't believe that at all. It's all to do with money. Money. And I hate that attitude. I've always hated it. It will make me rich personally. I don't care. I care about integrity. I care about art. I care about video games being games, and you can still put it in a shell. I mean, this Fate of Atlantis that I just showed, I think I'm gonna put it in some kind of a casing to keep it in a good state and everything.
Right, but not a case where you have to take a sledgehammer to get it out if you ever, yeah.
And also the grading. I can also start my own grading. Sigma man grading.
Yeah.
I'm the true man's man, Sigma grading, and I'm the best. I mean, everyone can start grading, and they've already been proven some shady stuff is going on. There's also been fake games have been graded even.
Yeah.
How much do they actually know? And if you see,
right.
Of course, I don't know all of them personally. So I do really believe that there are some out there that really know their stuff and they grade games.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's a pretty common opinion of what I've heard. I've actually this morning I reached out to Wada and said, "Hey, I run this podcast. I'd like someone, from you to be on the show. We could talk about grading, kind of get, and I haven't heard anything back. I don't think I will, but we'll see. But I think it'd be interesting to have them on and
well, rather you than me. I have no interest in talking, especially that bunch of people.
Yeah.
I think they are shady as hell.
Sure.
And that's been proven already. That's been proven already by some very good YouTubers. And if they're trying to be really honest about it now and they've turned a new leaf, good for them. Hopefully.
Well, they got purchased. So WADA just got purchased by JSA or PSA I think, or someone. So I don't know if you were aware of that, but I saw that on the internet.
I think it all sucks anyway.
Yeah.
And so, a friend of mine also that has been in my podcast, he started letting his games be graded and everything, and he wanted to talk about it to me. It's coming online very soon, that episode, when we talked about it. I mean, we didn't get angry with each other.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But we're not agreeing. No,
we're
not agreeing at all.
And that's okay. Yeah.
Next time I see him in person, I punch him.
There you go. Or throw all of his, throw all the graded games, in a trash compactor or something there.
Constantly making jokes about the grade police, that if he get them, that I need this one sealed, that I'm not allowed to play it anymore because the graders have taken over the world.
Yeah.
Nonsense
like that. So you mentioned your podcast, and you also have a website. So tell me a little bit about both of those real quick.
Yeah, I mean, when I had around 2,000 somewhat games and a kid, one already back then, still just one, I thought, well, I need to do something with this. I mean, else it's just taking up space, and I don't have a lot of time to play all of these. It's more of like a library, I think. I want to play it. I want to be able to just grab it. But I want to do something with it, and I've written game reviews and articles about video games for a long time now. I've been doing that for more than 20 years. I started out with a local newspaper as a freelance, just every once a month or so. I got a video game to write a very small article about it. But it was a big newspaper over here, so that was pretty awesome. I got to keep the game, and I got paid. Not a lot, it's just on the side. So something on the side, But
you get to keep the game, yeah, that's great.
That was great, yeah. And then we got all kicked out when they merged with another newspaper. All the freelancers were kicked out. And then I went to a website. So I wrote for a website for a long time, but I wanted to do my own thing. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to do something with my video game collection, do something with it. So I started writing about my... Also, I came from a desk job. I was drumming a lot and teaching somewhat on the side. But I was really unhappy with my job, and I needed to vent. I needed to write it out of me, And so that helped with the website. And then I started the podcast. I started the podcast already before there were just a few podcasts. 12 years ago or something I started one, or longer ago even. There was Epic Battle Axe, I know. Very cool American podcast with 3 amazing gamers that was such a cool podcast, and that inspired me to do my own. But I never aired it. It was, internet was still, in comparison to now, it was very difficult to get your podcast online properly. If you didn't know, in comparison to now, at least, it wasn't that difficult. But I couldn't handle it.
I'm sure, yeah, much more
figure it
difficult.
out. I had so much stuff going on. Also, mentally, wasn't doing all that well.
What
Also, the
what's
podcast now is going really well. I've made so many friends on Instagram. A
yeah,
friend of mine who's a marketing expert.
yeah.
It's his profession, actually. He said to me, "Well, focus on Instagram. I think that's the best for you." And he proved to be very right. It's if you go about it in the right way, Instagram is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
The folks behind it sometimes suck.
Sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
I have 99.9% only positive experiences on
Mhm.
Instagram. I've made
Yeah.
friends. I've gotten to know a lot of people, friendly
Yeah.
people, lovely people, weird people in a good way, and a lot
That's
of
actually
chicks.
that's how I go about finding people to be on the podcast, believe it or not, is through Instagram. I,
No, I
find
believe
people,
you
send them
entirely.
messages, and yeah. What was the name of the website? How do we access the website?
Yeah, it's all in Dutch, so you need to push that
Huh.
translate button on your
Huh.
Google thingy. It's retrogamepapa.nl.
Okay. Very
My
easy to remember.
podcast is occasionally in English, by the way. We've got because
Hmm.
I got some people asking for that, and
But yeah.
it also garners more listeners.
Are
So
the non-English episodes, do they have subtitles in English as well in case?
no,
No.
no,
Okay. Okay.
no,
All
it's
right.
audio only. I wanted to do something like this, but for now it's too hard for me to do
Sure, sure.
this. And I've got a couple of guests, regular guests that don't want to be filmed. So
Gotcha.
I'm
Gotcha.
fine with that.
Fair. So, one last question that I ask everyone, this is a podcast about video game collecting. Hopefully people who are watching that are video game collectors are starting to do that. What advice do you have to them for those that are just starting video game collecting?
Yeah, really look at what you love. I think that's important. Not go into a crazy quantity over quality approach to it, because you really will go make yourself crazy with buying shit. I'm sorry, I cursed.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
And it's really ask yourself what's the one thing or two things or a couple things I would really like to have the most, and then make up a plan if it's way too
Hmm.
expensive, but really go
Yeah.
for that. I mean, I did it with Panzer Dragoon Saga, for example. I thought I love that game series so much, that world, that music. It's so I love it so much.
Yeah.
It's really as if it's made for me. That world. I'm just gonna pay up for that. And a friend of mine, for example, really wants Mega Man Legends. He has been talking to death about me, about to me for 5 years now or something. That he really wants Mega Man Legends 1 and 2. I bought them when they came out, and nobody cared. And I said, I have for the last 3 years or so. I said to him, just buy it, man. It's only gonna rise up in price, and if you want it that much, just buy it. So, and it's not that you squander your money, but really wonder, why are you doing this, and do you really need this? If you go by a thrift store and you see all these mediocre games, do you really need them? Is it really
Yeah.
something you're going to do anything with it? Is it any value to you? I mean, it's gonna sound laughable, that what I'm gonna say right now, because I have over 3,000
Yeah.
video games, and I have over 300 Transformers, because I also like collecting Transformers. I really like the Marie Kondo way, that Japanese minimalist, and I also like the minimalists, by the way. I read their books also. And they say what Marie Kondo said, for example. She says, hold it in your hands and really ask yourself, is this something, does it feel of value? I'm not going to do this with 3,000 games now. But you can really ask yourself and take a couple days with some stuff. Is it really of value to me? Before buying an expensive game. But just save up for it and buy it then. Because I've done this a couple times now, that I saved up a bit. That Fate of Atlantis, for example. I'm never going to play it. It's just for the box. It's very expensive, just that box alone. For a
Hmm.
piece of cardboard. But it makes me so happy that I finally own this now. And it wasn't hundreds of euros, by the way. But I really thought, I really want it now. And what I also recommend, so really seek out what your passion is, and don't lose sight of that just by buying stuff.
Yeah.
Try never to do that, because no one in the end becomes happy with it.
I think it's
Never.
very easy to be overwhelmed because there's so many consoles, so many
Yeah.
different
And
systems and
that's
games that you can
what I
buy.
always
Yeah.
what I always do is also with I have here in this attic. I have some TV standing in, but I take one of those all CRT TVs downstairs, and I take out one console or two. Most of the time, it's just one, and I focus on that one for a month or so, or 2 months, and then it's got more focus, and it gets more the attention that it deserves. And I seek out a couple games, 5 or 6, and I play those. And also with collecting, I do the same. So I said, I love that Wild Arms series. I'm gonna try to find all of these. So it's just 6 games in the end. But it's really nice to, and also with the Jurassic Park games. Transformers, I love Transformers. Most games are pretty okay. So I bought all of them. And that was one of those things, a lot of searching to find games that are still very cheap. That's what I like.
Yeah.
Rare games that are still cheap because no one cares yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Find a niche.
Yeah.
For yourself, and then focus on that, for example. So don't lose focus too much.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think that's, I think a couple of people have said some similar things, but that's great advice. And when I first started, I was kind of overwhelmed, like, oh, I have to buy everything. But now I've since honed in on these are the things I want to play, or these are the things that mean something to me, or games like maybe when I was a child I wanted to play but I never got, and now I buy them to actually play them for the first time, which is also a cool experience. So
it can feel nostalgic even if you never played the game, because it reminds you of the time and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I played Infernal Machine. I never played that game, but it feels Indiana Jones, which is
brought you back to the 90s,
And it is a Tomb Raider game, and I've played all the Tomb Raider games ever since the first, and it's exactly the same. It's completely ripped off, but in a good way.
Yeah.
So I'm happy.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. Well,
in
again,
your case, for example, in your case, I mean, you are such a fan of Resident Evil. I cannot imagine why you wouldn't want all of the games. If I was if I were you.
Here's what's going to happen. If I buy that Game Boy game you showed, right, which is the Gaiden, the Resident Evil Gaiden, then I'm going to have to buy a Game Boy, and then I'm going to have to buy more Game Boy games, and it's just it's a avalanche effect, right? And so I need to prevent myself from doing that. So that's kind of what I'm doing.
Well, that's playing it safe. Yeah,
you're
right about that. I have a 3DO. I got one, and there are not many games on that system, so I'm just glad to find any game that I want to play.
Oh yeah.
And I found a Street Fighter. There's a very unique Street Fighter on there, and there's Alone in the Dark. The first Alone in the Dark only came out on PC and 3DO, so I bought that one. And it has a unique Jurassic Park game, and now I'm about done. So I have 3 games.
Wow, there you go.
Or something.
That's all you need. I mean, you don't have to collect them all. It's not like something that is required of you.
I admire people that go for a full library. I admire it a lot. I love browsing through such a collection.
Right.
I never ever would want to own it for myself. Unless I'm ridiculously rich and I have a huge mansion that I don't know how to fill.
And a lot of free time on your hands, because that is not, easy to do. That takes time.
Way too much spare time.
Yeah. But Peter, I want to thank you for being on the show again. We're coming up on our time here. But make sure everyone that you follow Peter on his socials, which would be Instagram, which is retrogamepapa, and then the website is retrogame.
It's retrogamepapa on all social media platforms, but I'm mainly on Instagram because I like that one the most personally.
And the website.
Yeah, and also my podcast is called Knights of the Retro Table.
Okay.
It's there's the Dutch version, which is the Dutch words, which non-Dutch listeners will sound like gibberish. But it's you can just look up for Knights a Retro Table, and then you'll find it.
On what platform?
On all
streaming platforms.
Yeah, unless there's a new one that I haven't joined with an RSS feed yet. It's
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned,
website. You can also find it on my website. Yeah.
Perfect. And you talked about Dutch being kind of a garble of words that maybe might not be understood by some, but I would like, if you don't mind, could you say in Dutch, can you tell people to subscribe to Dr. Gamer Retro and like this video for more content?
Ja. Alle Nederlandse luisteraars, wordt lid van DoctorGamerRetro op YouTube en volg hem op Instagram. Supercoole Amerikaanse YouTuber en podcaster en retrogamer.
Wow, I have no idea what that was, but I picked out a few
Yeah,
words.
yeah,
But so
that you're an awesome dude and that people should
no,
follow you.
yeah, excellent. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks again for the time difference is a big thing, but I appreciate you being on the show, and we'll see you all next time on the next episode of the podcast. Bye,
You're very
everyone.
welcome. It was absolutely lovely talk, man.